and welcome to the Tern Heads podcast, the podcast that brings you actionable tips, industry insights and employment journey examples to help you start your dream career in the creative industries. I'm your host, Sam Fairbrother, and on today's episode, I'll be talking about the power of mentorship and community with UX designer Giles Airey. Giles helps aspiring UX designers to develop their portfolio and enter the industry. So let's get started. It would be great if you could introduce yourself a little bit more. Tell us a bit about your industry and your background.
Sure. So I've been in the, I suppose you could class the design industry for well over 20 years now, after graduating in 99. And it's taken me as far as New Zealand. I've worked in London, Liverpool, currently working in Manchester for Talk as a senior UX designer, running a team of 3 or 4 people. I've started off in graphic design in London, and then moved out to New Zealand and did a little bit of dabbling in packaging, which was good because it helped me understand some very practical nuances around production, which is good because it takes you further forward to when you get into UX and the digital space. It helps you understand aspects of what is required to actually produce something. Mm-hmm. So you have which is fundamental, really. So and then I got into branding, marketing, and advertising in New Zealand, and then moved back and was given a job to help manage people's brands online, which ended up effectively morphing into UX. And since then, I've kind of ran with it, and here I am really now. So that's been my career up to date, and it's been very enjoyable. I've always wanted to be a designer since I was about 4 years old, so I'm kind of very happy with what I do.
Yeah, great. And you've been super busy through the lockdown, haven't you? Do you want to say a bit more about that?
Yeah. So we all went into lockdown obviously in March, and I was sadly furloughed on the 1st of April, and gutted, quite frankly. I've been at the company for 8 years, and I was fairly senior. I was the design director there. And I was working in the Liverpool office, and what they're trying to do was cull any individual roles outside of London, as I understood it anyway, and put them on temporary hold because we lost a lot of work basically. And I hoped I would have been kept on to help turn the company around, but I wasn't. So that was quite disappointing. And I sat there and licked my wounds for half a day, and then thought, well, there must be other people out there that are in a worse position than myself. And I was actually mentoring a young chap on LinkedIn anyway, who'd reached out a few months prior, and I'd just been chatting to him and helping him with a few bits and bobs. And then I thought, well, he was looking to get into the industry. I thought, well, there must be the people out there that are now confined to their bedrooms, have got no real chance of getting into an office to learn professional skills. By professional, I mean things that aren't just themselves cooking up, let's design a new UI interface for Spotify based on anything that I've come up with myself. It's quite interesting, but it doesn't actually lend any as much credibility to a portfolio as it could do as a professionally handled project. So I thought, well, I'll go and I'll just see if I can help people. So I contacted a lot of people who I've done talks to. Got out, whether it's UX Crunch or Ladies That UX or NUX, all these sort of various UX people, and said, look, I've helped you guys out with a few talks. I'm going to go out to LinkedIn and put myself out there and say, if anyone wants some help getting into the industry, I'm there. Could you please support this post, I suppose I'd call it. And they did. And I ended up getting about 10 people get in touch with me, and we had a session, and I just said to everyone, look, I'm going to help you put together a live project. And because as a senior in the field, when I interview people, I like to see a project has been thought through and it's gone through stage and it's been considered. Anyone, any Muppet can sit there and learn Figma and have a good eye for design and rattle through some bits and bobs and say, oh, look at me, onto good. But very few people know how to apply those in a logical, often with some restrictions of a project, way that can look credible into the industry. So it's basically an industry standard project, and it'll be overseen by myself, and the group will be there to support each other. So I said to everyone, okay, we're going to go through effectively 5 stages. Kind of by this stage, I wasn't really sure. I was kind of by the hoof a little bit, really, but I kind of worked it all out. And I said, well, we're going to start off with First week is going to be project brief writing, because I think that's a massively underrated and underused part of the industry. Hugely important to fully understand what it is you're doing. If you're not asking the right questions, how on earth are you going to answer things correctly and provide the right solution? So it was project brief writing, and then once I understood the project I wanted to do, I said, well, we're going to go into a level of research for your project, and that's going to be sort of vertical research, i.e. what's happening within this industry. Lateral research, for example, what is anyone else doing in the digital space that we can bring in to help us? An example of that might be, let's say, a government portal using the sort of swipe left, swipe right thing that Tinder have done, for example. That kind of idea with using lateral research. And then, obviously things like various user groups and that sort of stuff, and just so look at the research, and from that, so you've got your project brief, then you've got your research, and then we're going to move into basic user personas and some basic user journeys. That's what they want to achieve, and those three things work together and they feed back into each other, because the brief is important to do because it keeps everything in place and make sure that you're answering just maybe 5 or 6 key questions. And then from that, your research refers back to that, and the personas goes back to that. And then these three things may evolve. Once you've got those first three stages nice and tight, but I imagine this would take 3 weeks, a week a stage, let's say, for example. You would then move into your wireframes, and then you'd move into the final UI. And the idea was at the end of it, at the end of 5 weeks, you'd have a project that you could go in your portfolio and say to someone, this is what I've done, this is my stage, this is my process. And that would almost be their flagship project if they went into an interview. Mm-hmm. And that was the idea. The weekly constraints I was putting on things didn't work at all, because people need different time. People needed one-to-one mentorship as well as just this weekly sessions, because we set up a weekly session every Tuesday for an hour, and I would discuss the next step and let them go away with it for a week. But then people would want my time. People would work at different rates, and I had to also accept that people were going through mental hardships, lacking motivation, sometimes lacking, had anxiety. Some people may get ill, unfortunately. And so I was like, well, I'm not doing anything. I was on furlough. So I thought I'll just keep offering my services as much as I possibly can and trying to grow the group as much as possible. And it's just grown and grown and grown. And then after a few weeks, I realised I've got a lot of contacts as well I can use to bring in and help talk. Because something, I don't know everything. I know enough about enough to help people. And but I thought, well, some questions were coming out, and I was thinking, well, I know a bit about that, a bit about research, for example, but I don't know the ins and outs of it. So I went out again on LinkedIn. So anyone want to help out? And I got a load of people offering their professional services, from recruiters to UX researchers to senior art workers, all sorts of people, project managers, business analysts that I knew, just saying, I'd be delighted to come and talk to the group and give the people an idea of context as to where their role will sit in once they get a job, and how they can tailor their portfolios to best suit particular roles, and also help them discover what they're good at, whether they're particularly good at user research, whether they're particularly good at UI, whatever it is, visualizing stuff, rapid ideation, all sorts of bits and bobs. So it's just become, and it's been on, still going. So it's been going now for well over 9 months. Since then, at the moment, I've got about 26 active members. I would say a good portion of those are very, very, well over half every week. They come in every week, and we talk for an hour. And what's been really nice since then is a lot of them have gone to get full-time work, which is fantastic. And they've kindly said a lot of it's to do with not only what they've learned, but also the support the group has given them, because that's really important as well. To be in a like-minded group where everyone gets familiar. We've got our own Slack group set up, and so we just chat. People just chat about all sorts. It chatted loads on. It almost during the US elections almost went out of message space because everyone was just chatting about all sorts of bits and bobs. But it's nice because they got to share and become mates, really. And everyone's talking about when this was all over, meet up for a few drinks and that sort of stuff, which is fantastic. And it became a bit of I hate to use the word self-help, it's probably the wrong expression, but it became a bit of a safe group of people. Seek solid. People describe it as their little oasis every week, where they could go and they can have a laugh for an hour, that sort of thing. And that was really important. And that was something that I was very proud of creating. And since then, it's got even better because a friend of mine who runs a company, she's a lovely, lovely girl. She could see what I was trying to do, and she said, I won't lie, we're trying to create a website to complement our main website, but we need it done cheaper than if we went to an agency with one of your mentors, your mentorees help. And I said, sure. So I brought the project to the group, and everyone's chipped in. We've decided, we found a direction we're going to go in with one of the designs that was approved by the client, and there's hopefully more work in the pipeline. So, brilliant. And the more important thing is people who actually have got jobs keep coming back to the group. They keep coming back to share their experiences because they enjoy it, and and it's good. There's a couple of people who have presented quite regularly, very senior people who have agreed to help get involved as mentors as well. And on a personal level, it's given me a purpose. When you feel quite lost and quite demoralized, it helps to have to be strong for other people, because it forces you to stop licking your wounds and actually makes you get off your backside. So that's been great. And I was unfortunate enough then to be made redundant in late July. I picked up a job since, which is great. And I said, I work at TalkTalk, and actually that helped me. I think the work I've been doing in my downtime has actually helped me get that job, if I'm honest. So that's been good. Yeah, I've got a hell of a lot out of it. And I say I've got people now queuing up to get involved, to learn about being a mentor. Because I think the people who have presented see the difference they actually make. And people who have presented, some people have come back time and time again to speak to the group. Yeah. So that's great.
That's brilliant. And what are the sort of the main things you try and teach within the group? Because am I right in thinking it's a mix of kind of graduates and people who are transitioning from?
Yeah, originally it was anyone. It's evolved mainly to career switches, I think. Yeah. Some people have. So I sort of dubbed it the game changers initially, because I thought people want to change the game, and I'd watched that documentary on Netflix as well. That was probably back in mind. Not that I stopped me. Not that it made me become vegan, but and I just sort of carried on. And then it kind of stuck a little bit, because it ended up, I found that I had probably more of a synergy with people who were career switching than people who were very, very green in life, as well as in the UX industry. And I think I probably had a bit more empathy with them as well. Some people who have got kids, for example, who might have gone through, some people might have gone through separations and that sort of stuff, looking to change their career. And because they, I thought, I don't know, for some reason that they, it felt more of a cry for help than someone who's got the whole life ahead of them, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I opened it up to everyone. Of course I did. I opened it up to everyone. And there are some people who are still left, who are people who have just left university, because I also believe that education prepares people for education and not necessarily for the workplace at times. And so some people, I think, who have just left education have actually benefited loads being around the slightly older person, the more worldly wise people as well. That's been good. So I'd say at the moment it's probably 80-20 split in terms of career switches to new education. Right. Some people who were midweight designers tried to come in as well, and I extend it to everyone and say, look, it's open, but they came in and dropped out pretty quickly, because I think even though I could have helped them on a one-to-one mentor basis, I have the responsibility to the group I've nurtured, and they quite rightly said, I think the group's a bit junior for me. I said, yeah, absolutely, no problem at all. If you want to come back again, feel free. If you even want to come in and maybe even contribute, if you yourself want to move into mentorship, you're part of the active Slack group now. So come in and say, I'd like to present to the group, Giles, and that'll be great. So yeah, it's mainly career switches, I'd say it's aimed at now, mainly, but open to everyone, of course.
Yeah. And you mentioned before that you have a 5-step process. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so that was really just me thinking, what is the best way to structure a program? It was actually something I promised that I'd do on, I think, the second or third session. I'd forgotten I'd promised it. I had 15 minutes before the session. I was like, God, I've got to, I said it, didn't I? And I thought, well, I don't want to overwhelm people with. The thing is, there's so much out there. If you go onto LinkedIn and, for the best will in the world, you want to speak to people and join groups and expand your network and learn things and resources and courses and all this. And there's theories and analogies, and everyone's got these success stories and these opinions and these blogs, and and programs. There's so much out there that it becomes overwhelming even for me. And the important thing is to help people find their voice. And there's more than one way to skin a cat. I can't turn around to someone and say, do your career this way, learn this program, learn it this way, read this book, I can help people. And I've said to everyone all along, I'm there to signpost you. I'm not there to tell you what to do, I'm there to signpost you. So in a way, before this third session, I told everyone about the process. It actually was quite good that I only gave myself 15 minutes, because if I thought about it too much, I'd have probably just overread the pudding and ended up trying to get them to plot exactly the course I plotted in my life. And so I just thought, well, logically, what do I look to see? I'd look to see project brief. That's got to be really important. And like I say, I learned in my career how important that was when I was in New Zealand, and we were setting up a team in New Zealand, and we brought in a creative director from Ogilvy and Mather called Darryl Hughes. Great guy, brilliant guy, actually. And he ended up being a bit of a mentor of mine, actually. And he was helping me understand the importance of project briefing. Now, I'll give you a quick example as to what it was that really sort of the penny drop for me. Was he said we were designing a stall for a coffee bean product house in a big Auckland food show, and he says, oh, "Okay, so what's the idea of this project?" And I said, "Well, the idea of the project is to create this stall, so we attract visitors to the stall, and then we sell them their product, and then they go and stock their product in their cafes and and all this." And he goes, "No, that's not the project at all." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're trying to do too much on the project. Your brief here is to attract people to the store. What happens after that is not your job. That's when the sales guys take over. That's when the production takes over. That's when these things are." And the point I'm making is, if you don't understand the brief and constantly interrogate it and almost get it down to what is the one thing you want to achieve here, you're going to be all over the place, and you're going to be asking the wrong questions and trying to solve the wrong problems that aren't even there for you to be solved, because that's other people's jobs to solve. So the concept of writing a proper brief is really important. And I wanted the younger designers, the more junior designers, to not get distracted by everything else they see on LinkedIn and everything I've spoken about, and be able to focus on one single goal. So I got them to work on a really good brief, and I gave them a template to work through 5 or 6 key questions. Things such as, what is the one thing we're trying to achieve? What's the one thing we know about our customers that can help us? All these sort of things. What's the promise? And just so look at the intangibles. And I walked them through the brief, and I did a mock-up brief myself to demonstrate how a thought process could be pulled apart, and lent it to them and say, right, you go away, put together your idea, put it into this brief, and we'll look at the brief for you. And invariably, they'd come back to me, and they'd be trying to, again, boil the ocean, do too much, and I'd help them pare it down even further and further and further. And they might have an idea that's vast, and that's fine to have that idea. What we have to do is go, but in the real world, you wouldn't try and do that idea in one hit. You might go, right, we're going to start off with, in the first sprint, let's say, we're going to start off with this. So you might just do 5% of the project, and then you might just work a couple of sprints, get that done, pass on to developers, and then in the meantime, you've been grooming your backlog, and then you know what the next stage is to do, and so on and so forth, and you bring it through the process. So again, demonstrating to the designers how they could pare down their project, only concentrate on 5% of it, also gave them an opportunity to understand the concept of, like I said, creating a backlog of work. Because if they can talk to that in an interview basis, that again demonstrates knowledge of a process, whether it's agile process or whatever it is. So that was a really good part that the project briefing was. And then, like I said, the next thing, once they knew what they wanted to achieve, they would go on to do the research, see what else is out there, what they're competing against, what the user's doing, what they're feeling, all that sort of stuff. You know, maybe we get some user interviews, and maybe we get some bits and bobs. Anything, the more interviews they can do and the more research they can do, the better. But again, people are restricted to, some people were still working, some people had got time on their hands, whatever. Some people, it wasn't necessarily tiered lockdowns at those points, but some people had more access to people than others. Some people were looking at SurveyMonkey and all sorts, you know, so we're looking at quantitative versus qualitative, and it was quite good. A lot of things dropped out of it, and the research was quite an interesting phase actually people went through. And like I said before, there was kind of like, I taught them the difference between vertical and a lateral research as well, you know, which was quite interesting. And we started to get quite a lot of interesting projects drop out of it. People were talking about student students looking to move house in Denmark, I think it was, and how they get moving services, because she'd been a student herself, and there's actually a market for it over there, reliable moving services. We've got people looking at completely contactless visits when you go to residential care homes. And the one rule I had on the project was it had to be something they came up with themselves to keep themselves interested in it, because there's no point me giving them a project that's not personable to them. And the other rule was it had to be a product that could help us in a post-COVID-19 world. That was the only two rules I had, really. And I said, just away you go. So we had the project brief, we had the research, and then once I got the research, I said to them, now you've discovered some more things, let's go back and see if that affects your project brief at all. And that's because it may well affect some bits and bobs. It may well have shown us that actually there isn't a project here. For all we know, there's all these sort of things we had to allow to play off against each other. And then once we got that all tightened up, we could go, okay, right, we still know our brief, let's go back to the next stage, which would be looking at mapping out our personas. So basically documenting the people you'd interviewed, let's say, and then looking at which one you're going to choose for which stage of the journey you're going to choose, and then going into basic user flows, what they're trying to achieve, how they're trying to do it. And so this section would be like personas and user flows, I suppose. And so what you're trying to do at this stage is almost bridge that gap between research into getting to something that's visual, that's got some documentation around it that people can actually follow and see a path and see a start point and an end point to it. And then once we're happy with that, again, we had a cross-reference and go back to make sure that those user flows were actually answering the project brief. And if we have actually uncovered something else, we could go back and we could tweak things again. And so we got this nice tight flow of these three things working together, of the project brief, the research, and the personas user flows. And then we'd go basically move into wireframing and bring those user flows into, progress them into some, again, expressions of expressions, user flows, user journeys. Everyone uses different expressions for them, but we progress them into, I suppose, wireframes, and those wireframes would demonstrate a journey. You start to bring it to life a little bit, and then once you've done that and you're happy with everything, we'd make sure we're answering the right question, whether it's 10 frames or 20 frames, whatever you want to do on the wireframe, whether you want to do all the little interstitial moments, because that's really important, or whether you want to do slightly more holistic elements, that's fine. Whether you put it into any kind of usable prototype, if you want to go and get it tested, fantastic. If you don't worry about it. Let's just put on a nice level of UI at the end of it all. So UI was the last stage. And again, people necessarily wouldn't be great at UI. And I say to people, don't worry about it. You can just use material design, for example. You can just get that from Sketch or Figma or XD or whatever. Just drop that over the top of it, just so it looks presentable. And then you've got your project, basically. So you've got your 5 stages, create this project. And it was a nice stepped project. And of course, the one thing I'd forgotten about, which is why the groups ended up going on and on and on, was that people are going, great, how do I put this into a presentation? And that's when we had discussions on what best tools to use, whether it's PowerPoint, whether it's Google Slides, whether you use Keynote, or whatever these things are, how your animations, and that was quite interesting as well. Some people would design presentations, they'd have the project and they'd have all these embellishments. You know what we're like as designers, we're ego driven, we love things that look beautiful, but unfortunately what's beautiful for you may be horrific for other people. So that's where also people who are coming in to talk to the group could give their insight and say, what I look for is this, what I look for is that. Ian Robertson from Secret Escapes is fantastic, and one of the quotes he said was, I don't even necessarily care what it looks like at the end of the day, because that's subjective, as long as it's presented very well and clearly, and I can see your thought process, what's led you from point A to point B, C, so on and so forth. And that was good, because that little nuggets like that enabled me to go back to them and say, remember what Ian said, don't worry too much about this. Why have you got that flower in the background of your presentation? Get rid of it. No one's interested in a flower. It's completely taken away from the designs. Why have you got this? Why have you got that? You don't have to mention your name on every single slide. It doesn't matter. Get rid of it. Just keep it nice and clean. And again, some of the senior UXs that came in to present to us, when they present some of their existing projects, the guys got to see sometimes the best slides are just black and white. That's all it is. That's all you need, because you're just trying to convey a simple message. That's all. Yeah, so that was the five-step process, really. It worked very, very well. And it's still going today, although the group's more evolved to something slightly different now. And I think some people who are doing projects kind of fallen by the wayside. And I've always said to them, that's fine. I'm not here to hold you accountable to it. If you want to keep coming to the group, brilliant. If you don't feel that you want to progress the project, that's fine. But maybe you can take things and you can learn from them and put them into your portfolio. And of course, some people went on to get jobs before they finished the project, which was great, because that means the pressure was off them as well. So yeah, that's basically that bit.
Yeah, brilliant. And what would you say to people who are considering joining a community or perhaps becoming a mentor? What do you get out of it, and how can you get involved?
What you get out of being a mentor is a lot of personal growth. I used the expression earlier about finding your own voice. Mm-hmm. When you're in a business, and a larger business, you can at times get sometimes everyone goes through different feelings in industry. Sometimes you feel like you might come out of a particular meeting and found that and think be a bit disheartened. I think you're not listened to. Particularly when I was in Liverpool, I often used to come out of digital meetings with the London group thinking no one's really paying attention to anything I've just said there, and you get a bit down and you start to lose your direction a little bit, maybe a bit of motivation. And that can be a dangerous spiral to get into. And everyone talks a lot about that imposter syndrome, that sort of thing. But when you've actually got people relying on you and listening to you, and you start talking, and provided you've done things correctly, in the sense that you've done your homework and you've prepared correctly, probably a bit more than a quarter of an hour, but you prepared correctly. Same as whether you're talking at UX Crunch or NUX or whatever, any of these groups that are out there now today. When you actually are talking, you actually go, God, I actually know what I'm talking about. You'll catch yourself listening to yourself going, God, I'm actually making sense here. and then the feedback you'll get from people saying, yeah, that was a really great session. Thanks a lot, Giles, for this. I found that really interesting. I really liked what you spoke about. Do you mind if we have a bit of a one-to-one session during the week and we'll catch up on this bit? Because I think that bit will really help my project. And you start to realise that you've got a lot to offer. And particularly at the moment, people's mental health and confidence will have taken a knock. Of course it will. It like I said, it gives you that sense of self-worth, which is great. And then when you can start seeing people progress and get jobs and thank you for it, you think, good, I'm glad I helped these people on their way. And there's nothing better than that, really. So I would say you get, being a mentor, you get to find your own voice. You get to speak with confidence. You just get to help people. Who doesn't want to be given that opportunity? I think I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek and the whole start with why concept. And my why most certainly is helping people. Always has been, now I look back on it. That's kind of, I've always been looking for my why. I thought it was communication, but I've since realised actually, since in the last 9 months, actually is helping people. I get such a buzz out of it. So, you get a lot of things. And now I get people coming to me saying, I'd like to get part of your group. Being a mentor is going to be, some people who presented to my group have said, I'd like to come and be part of the group and help present more regularly. Being a mentor is going to be one thing I want to tick off in 2021, and this sort of stuff. So they got to get an idea of it. And I think we have got a responsibility as well. The world is going to a much more digital, reliable age. And also, I did a couple of talks even before this was set up about how people have got scammed and people, there was a lot of bad stuff out there. And I think it requires people like me to help spread a message and help teach a new generation coming through the right way to design. It's not about money, it's about making a difference and helping people. And that's what we should be doing. Inclusivity, accessibility, all these sort of things that are coming out nowadays, much more to the fore. It's important to do that and to be an opportunity where you can be largely at the forefront of that. And when you put things out on LinkedIn to all of a sudden get quite a lot of traction, you think that's good. And I'm starting to make a difference myself. And that's the most important thing, I think, that you start to make a difference.
Fantastic. And so how can people get involved if they want to connect with you and perhaps join?
Oh, very simple. Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. Simple as that. Find me on LinkedIn, send me a message, and we'll chat. Well, yeah, when I put out the odd message now and again, like I say, group updates. I have to be careful how much I do it because very often I get quite a lot of interest, and I don't want to let people down. I don't want to bite more than I can chew. So recently I got quite a lot of interest, and I responded back to everyone. There's about 15 people, and you expect there's going to be some people that aren't going to follow up on you because some people naturally they're interested and then their enthusiasm wanes a little bit, which is fine. Again, no problem. But I want to make sure that people who are going to get on board are going to be contributing to the group and not just periphery and then just leave. So I left it a little while and got I say 8 people who responded back to me, and I waited to see if any more responses came through. And once I sort of cut it off, I got in touch with those 8 people and said, great, well done everyone, let's meet up next week. And I've arranged a session on Thursday, actually, this Thursday, for those people, and we're going to have half an hour. I'm going to walk them through the group, just like I'm walking through it now with you, and see if they're interested. And again, there's no pressure. And if they're interested, great, come and attend a session. And if they feel they get something out of it, I'll probably invite them to join the Slack group, and then we just go from there, really. I don't expect everyone to continue picking these things up. Some people have come in, contributed fantastically, and then just dropped off because life gets the better of us at times. It's just the way it is. So yeah, people can just get in touch with me through LinkedIn, or that's the best way, I think. It's not tricky to find Giles Airey. It's not many of us around, and or Twitter as well. What's my Twitter? Giles_Airey is mentor, isn't it? So they can get hold of me there as well. Just get in touch and message me.
Fantastic, and I'll put the links attached to this content as well.
Yeah, you've got all my details, so put everything on. This is my permission to put everything on there. I'm quite an approachable person. I won't turn anyone away. So yeah, please feel free just to get in touch, and I will look to respond as soon as I possibly can.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for giving up your time today and to chat to us about mentoring and communities and UX design. It's been really fantastic. So thank you so much. And if anybody out there who is looking to get into UX or any other creative industry, do hop over to ternheads.com, where you can upload your portfolio, and you can also join forums there as well with other people who are in exactly the same situation with you to share and grow, just like in Giles's community too. So thanks again, and speak to you soon.